Does paying only the minimum hurt your credit score? A very common question we get asked all the time, and I wanted to welcome you to My Credit Makeover, where your perfect score is right around the corner, my friend. In this video, we're going to be discussing what happens when you only pay the minimum balance due on your credit card and whether it can help or hurt your credit score. Keep watching because the truth may surprise you. And if you want more credit score tips, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and also click the little notification bell so that you're the first to know when new credit repair videos come out. Also, if you want to raise your scores the fastest, go ahead and click the link in the description and you can grab a free copy of our report called 11 Top Tips to Boost Your Credit Score for free. So let's talk about the minimum and how it affects your score. Let's be honest here for a second. The credit game is an extremely confusing one. If it was a straightforward game, it wouldn't be such a big issue for people, but because it's super confusing, it's an issue for millions of consumers all around the world. And one of the most confusing parts of the whole game is the minimum payment part of it. Most people have absolutely no idea how this works, why it's important to pay more than the minimum, and how this can actually damage their credit scores a lot if they only pay that minimum amount. So let's get into exactly what the minimum payment is and how it can hurt you just making the minimum payment instead of a larger one or paying off your debts in full. So first off, what is a minimum credit card payment? In simple terms, in the very, very simplest way to explain it, it's the lowest amount that you're required to pay during a given month after you started racking up the balance on your credit card. It's often a fraction of your total balance plus those good old fees and interest amounts that we all love so very much, right? And the bad thing is, if you fail to make this minimum payment, you can actually get late fees on top. And if you don't pay in a 30-day period, your creditor can actually report you to the bureaus and your credit score can drop even more. If you let this go, you can even have canceled accounts, and that is no bueno. That can hurt your score a lot. And this sucks because it's the opposite of what you're trying to do, right? Which is raise your score. And it's a big deal too. You can literally lose up to like 100 points and get all kinds of derogatory marks in your credit report. And those can stay there for literally 7 years. 7 years, my friend, if you don't hire a credit repair company to wipe them for you. And by the way, you can head over to mycreditmakeover.com because if you ever do need one of those credit repair companies, we have an article on there that shows you how to sort the good ones from the bad ones, because there's some good ones where you can pay a little bit of money to and they get a ton of results for you right away. And there's some that take a lot of money from you and don't do anything. And we want to make sure that you get the good ones, my friend. So anyway, you can avoid all of this scary stuff by simply making the minimum payment, and no derogatory marks will appear to hurt your credit score, which is awesome, right? That being said, your credit score can be hurt in other ways though when you do this. And before I get into that, let's talk about how much these minimum credit card payments usually are and what you can expect to pay. So here's how the story goes. Back before 2004, monthly payments could sometimes be as low as like 1% to 2% of your total balance. And that caused a ton of problems because most of the monthly payments was just interest that inflated every single month, so that every time the balance was reduced, it ended up growing back again. Sounds kind of complicated, but it just kind of turned into this cycle where regulatory agencies started to see that some consumers were getting locked into a vicious cycle of credit card debt that had them repaying literally thousands more than the balance and taking years to repay, which should have been able to been repaid in weeks or just months, right? And so today, a minimum payment has to be at least 1% of the total balance with the interest and fees on top of it that have accumulated during that month, ensuring that the balance can decrease by at least 1% if only the minimum payment is met. So, do you need to actually make your minimum payment? I would say you definitely do need to if you want to avoid derogatory marks and also avoid fees and interest and all of that icky stuff. If you fail to do this and you keep missing the payments, your account can even go into default, and that'll cause a whole host of problems that'll make it way harder to get your score back on track. The best route of action, honestly, is to avoid the minimum payment by just clearing your balance in full if you can. If you have the money to pay it off in full, you're guaranteed to get no derogatory marks for late payments, and you don't have any extra interest to pay because you paid off the whole thing. But if you only pay off the minimum, you start to get interest tacked onto everything, and you begin to enter a debt cycle that a lot of consumers find themselves locked in long term. Now, most will do what they can to pay off their balances in full, but then all of a sudden they have a month where things are kind of tight and the minimum payment starts to look very, very tempting for them. And they usually tell themselves, maybe you've been in this situation before, but they usually tell themselves that just 1 month of the minimum payment won't really hurt. But by that point, they're probably spending a little bit more, getting a little bit careless. Their amount of debt has actually grown more. And of course, the interest has grown on top of everything else. And this is the trap that the average consumer falls into, and one that you want to be able to avoid. And by the way, this is just one of the traps in the credit game. There are many. So be sure to click the link in the description and pick up a free copy of our guide to learn how to avoid all the traps in the credit game and actually boost your credit score for free if you need to. So anyway, here's some tips on how to avoid falling into this trap in the first place. The first thing is try to get what's called an introductory interest rate if possible. A lot of credit card issuers out there will actually offer a 0% intro APR for a fixed period of time, which can allow you to accumulate debt without interest if you're in a pinch. This usually doesn't last forever, but it's like for the first X amount of weeks or months you have the credit card, it can be at 0%. And this can even last a long time with some good cards that are out there. This can help you make some essential purchases or business investments if you need to without getting caught up in the interest trap if you know you have money coming in soon to cover everything. Now, when I talk about money coming in soon to cover everything, my second tip here to not fall into these traps is to only spend what you have. A credit card shouldn't be used to spend money that you don't have right now or money that you think you'll get in the future that's not guaranteed in the future. Remember, nothing is really guaranteed if you really boil it all down. So don't spend money aimlessly in hopes that your next paycheck or business commission or whatever will come in and just magically fix everything, because it might not come in. So also, the third tip is paying the minimum if that's your only option. Again, this isn't ideal, but if you can't pay the balance in full, make sure that you at least pay the minimum. Missed payments or late payments get fees, and that can lead to derogatory marks and account closures, which can tank your credit score like crazy. And number 4 is use balance transfers strategically. These are a clever little thing that you can use to help you out. If you're in a tight spot, consider a balance transfer credit card. These are cards called a balance transfer credit cards. These are special cards that allow you to move your full balance from one card or 2 cards or several cards if you have them to another and take advantage of yet another 0% APR and essentially extend the one you have if it's running out. Again, do not lean on this. It should be a temporary solution if you need to do it. But if you have one card that's had 0% APR and you racked up a balance, or you have a few cards and there's a new one that you can get out there that is one of these balance transfer cards where you can kind of consolidate everything on one, not have to pay interest on it for a while, and you know that you have some paychecks from your job or business commissions coming in to cover it, it might be a good job. But don't just endlessly move money from one card to the next to the next. A lot of people think that's the solution, and you just keep moving the debt from A to B to C, which is not how you want to play the game. So you may be wondering why you should pay more than the minimum if you have the option to just pay the minimum, and you know that you won't get derogatory marks by just hitting that minimum, right? You won't get derogatory marks, but the biggie is the interest and the fees. And by only paying the minimum, you could actually end up at the point where you're literally doubling and even tripling the amount of the principal that you repay every single month. Also, the interest accumulates every single day, and the interest also compounds. This continues literally every single day, and the larger your balance is, the more interest will compound and the greater your debt will be over time, which is honestly how credit card companies get rich, right? It's unfortunately also how consumers get stuck in the credit card traps that are out there. So by simply paying more than your minimum, or paying the balance off in full if you can, you're reducing the minimum, not having to worry about unnecessary interest, fees, and derogatory marks, and you're not falling into the debt cycle that so many consumers unfortunately get lost in. So, does paying the minimum hurt your credit score in any way? It doesn't hurt your score directly, but you're walking on a very fine line, because this is literally the bare minimum that you can do to keep your score on track. Remember how earlier I said that it doesn't hurt your score directly, but it can hurt it indirectly? This is because of something called the credit utilization ratio. ratio, which hurts your score like crazy if it gets out of whack. And this is the kind of thing that can drop you 40 or 50 points in a single day if you don't look out for it. Your credit utilization ratio is a score that basically compares how much credit you have available with how much credit you've already used. And this can account for up to 30% of your credit score and is a very big deal. I've seen some of my biggest drops in the past when I didn't have my credit under control come from failing to truly appreciate this percentage. So basically, the more credit card debt that you accumulate, the lower your credit utilization rate will be and the more your score gets impacted. So if you only pay the minimum, your rate will become stagnant because your card balance will always be filled up by the interest and such that's getting added to it, not giving you any free space, if you will. By increasing your payment amount, though, you can bring that ratio down and actually improve your credit score by also making sure your credit utilization ratio is in check. And if you ever want to calculate your credit utilization score, you can go over to mycreditmakeover.com, or you can simply add together the total amount of credit limits and debts and then compare the latter to the former. So for example, if you have a $5,000 credit line and a balance of $2,500 on it, you have a 50% ratio, which is a very much on the high side. You ideally want to keep this number as low as possible. You may also be wondering if your credit card fees can hurt your credit score, if you're actually getting any of these fees for being late on top of everything. They don't directly reduce your credit score, but they do have an indirect effect, just like so many sneaky things in this credit game, right, that we have to keep an eye out for. Cash advance fees are one type of fee that has absolutely gigantic interest and fee amounts on it. So you want to watch out for those and make sure that you're not hiking up your credit utilization ratio by accidentally getting too many cash advances, which leads to fees that are higher than other fee amounts that you might expect. Definitely something that can hurt your credit score by overextending your credit utilization ratio. I hope that this answers your question on that part. Paying the minimum doesn't hurt your credit score directly, but you can see all the different ways it can hurt you indirectly. And we wanted to lay it all out for you so that you knew what to watch out for. Ideally, just make sure that you're not blowing up your credit card by spending money on it that you don't already have in the bank. And if you have the money in the bank before you spend it on a card, you can easily pay off the whole thing in full and not worry about fees, interest, credit utilization ratios, or any of the other madness that comes with this world of credit. So leave a comment below and let us know what your preference is, whether you always pay the minimum, always pay it off in full, or usually do something in between. We'd absolutely love to know. Also, if this video gave you some value, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and click the little bell icon so you get notified before everybody else when future videos just like this one come out with our credit raising advice. We also want to make sure that you can get your hands on our free guide with 11 tips that we put together for you that are going to show you 11 no-cost ways to improve your credit score by yourself. And you can find that guide by simply clicking the links inside this video or below this video in the description. I hope that you're well, my friend, and cheers to your credit journey. We'll see you over in that workbook. And again, check out that workbook, subscribe to the channel, and hop on over to mycreditmakeover.com for all of your credit improvement needs. Adios.